In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make one framers. But before we start, I'd just like to tell you that for this effect, you need the New Blue Effects plugin and the BCC Effects plugin. Alright, so a lot of you guys have seen my one framers in my previous edits, and I'm gonna be recreating those now. So first of all, we need the BCC Relight effect and cut it down to one frame. One framers usually last about 4 to 5 frames. You can even shorten it down to 3 frames. Now we're gonna be using the plus glow, which is gonna come below the relight, and now we are gonna be using our interlacing, which is one of our more important effects, and I'm gonna be placing this below. So I hope you understand the layering. Relight comes first, followed by glow, then the interlacing, and finally the neon lights. Okay, now I'm gonna be tweaking all of these, and yeah, so relight doesn't need much, but the light, of course. For these framers, I'm gonna be using the color purple, so wherever you see the option of a color, just choose it to the color that you want. So here I see white, I change it to purple. And the interlacing will look back at it later. We're gonna be focusing on the neon lights right now. So what I want you to do is increase the density high enough to maybe 90, but this usually depends on your clip. And increasing the contrast really increases the sharpness of your edges. Now, as my framers are purple, I change this yellow to purple and mix color all the way up to 100 or maybe 80, because as you can see here, it's really just normal white, and this gets the more saturation of the color that I've selected. And increasing the blur just makes it a bit spreaded, so I'd recommend you choose a middle value over here to ensure that the glow is still intact. Now for the final thing, the picture is the most important, because this really tells you how the framer is going to be, and I like to keep this low because I want to keep a contrast between my edges and the background. So with this, the first framer is complete. Now for the second framer, what you need to do is select the split style effect, cut it down to one frame again, and now I'm going to copy paste this again, and as you can see, this looks like this. Now as you can see, this is not really an invert, because the invert is the framer that I'm looking for. So for that, I'm going to be using the monochrome effects. And monochrome 1 focuses more on the highlights, while the monochrome 2 focuses more on the shadows, and this is the perfect combination. So with this, our second framer is also now complete. Now for our third framer, what we're going to do is use a color and change the blend mode to overlay. And as you can see, I've really not done much. I've just copy pasted the same thing in an overlay. You just need to be creative with these effects. Now with this, our first framer is done. Amazing. So as you can see, it looks pretty good, and you can really tweak the colors and the mix color settings to adjust the clip. Now what I'm going to be using is another framer, and I'm going to be using different effects for that. So first of all, I'll be using my directional blur, and by default it goes for a horizontal blur, but if you're using a slide up or slide down transition, then a vertical blur would be much more suited. So I'm going to be keeping this to 6 frames or 5. And remember to keep your framers in the middle of your transitions, otherwise they won't really make sense. Okay, so let me see my final result of this. So what I want to achieve is a blur that really focuses, that really emphasizes on the horizontal lines. So really this just messes it up, and this potentially maybe leads me to somewhere, and I can keep this as my final result that I want to achieve. So I'm gonna be keyframing this so that it looks natural and doesn't look like as if it just came out of nowhere. And then I'm gonna be keyframing this back to 0. So as you can see, this transitions, the effect is transitioning. Alright, now what I'm gonna be using is the BCC wave effect, and this you can really depend. But now what I want to achieve is really small horizontal lines. So I'm going to be changing the wave angle to 0 and the wave width to approximately under the value 10, and the perpendicular height focuses on the horizontal aspect and the height focuses on the vertical aspects. So this here really helps you a lot. It's the same like interlacing, but the fact is that you can customize it more. Basically interlacing is just a hack for this. Alright, so this is what we are going to be looking at, and I'll also keyframe this. So this is gonna go from 0 to 200 back to 0. And never forget to keyframe your effects, otherwise they'll just look really sloppy. Sometimes your rendering may mess it up, so for that you may have to view it frame by frame. Also, another approach for keyframing this is to just leave your perpendicular height as it is. Yeah, leave your perpendicular height as it is and keyframe the wave width to 0, and then keyframe it to 6 and then keyframe it back to 0. So both work fine. But I'd really recommend this one to edit the wave width. Yeah, so I don't know why in my render it looks weird, but if you view it frame by frame, it looks just like the effect I intended it to do. Now what you can add is an RGB shift, and for this what you just have to do is remove the colors blue and green and see it it really gives a good aesthetic look. You may not want to go much long with this because it really becomes crowded and messes up the other effects, so maybe I'd keep it on top. Also, don't forget to add slight shakes over this, otherwise you really don't want your framers to be that much visible, so be sure to keep that in mind. Alright, now we are going to be going for the BCC flicker effect, and this is one of my most favorite effects as you can be really creative with it. So for example, after a framer you can add a flicker effect, because the point of framers is to just to cover up some frames and to make a cool transition, and to continue that style you can just add a flicker because it just goes black and white frame by frame. And the thing about this flicker effect is that it's very customizable. So in this case I'm gonna be using the rate at a high point. rate, I'm gonna be keeping it to full, and brightness maybe not so much. This much is okay. As you can see, it looks good. Now another thing we can do with this is to play around with the radius. So for example, here I've chosen my radius as 9 just to point at this character over here. So what my idea is that I'm gonna be keeping the circle, the black and white circle over here, and then the surrounding clip, which has much color, will be turned into black and white. So let me show you if you didn't get it. So this is our final result which we want to achieve. This is our final result. So I hope you get the idea now. Now if you really want to be specific, then you'll have to change the center. For me, I'll just use this as 4 or 3 and see it, maybe 2 5 it works. Yeah, so it really masks around the character really naturally, and my transition, it really looks good. You can even add this as an effect for your transitions, or you can use it anywhere you want. You can even add a color overlay to make it seem as if you went from color to non-color. So that was it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, leave a like and comment down below, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.